welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into Michael Porter's strategic frameworks to demystify how businesses actually construct value and generate profit. If you've ever looked at a highly successful company and wondered exactly how their day-to-day grind translates into a massive competitive advantage, well, you are in the right place. We're going to break down the true anatomy of a business to see where the real magic happens.
So let's kick things off by defining the value chain itself. Essentially, this is the entire ecosystem of activities a company performs to create a product and ultimately achieve a profit margin. It's a linked set of value-creating activities. Think of it kind of like a river. It begins with basic raw materials coming in from your suppliers, it flows through a series of value-added activities like manufacturing and marketing, and it finally ends when the finished goods are placed right into the hands of the ultimate consumer.
And you can see exactly how this framework breaks a business down into specific layers that all funnel toward creating that final margin of value. Notice the split there? You've got your secondary or support activities at the top and your primary activities along the bottom, and they are all pushing toward that arrow labeled margin. It's a really powerful visual reminder that every single department has to align to push the company forward.
To really grasp this, we're taking a macro to micro approach today. We'll be covering 1. The value chain framework. 2. Primary versus support activities. 3. Exploring primary activities. 4. Operations as the core engine. And 5. Creating competitive advantage.
All right, Section 1, the value chain framework, mapping the business organism. Let's start with the big picture, treating a business not as some disorganized jumble of tasks, but as a highly structured biological organism, or even a high-performance vehicle. The value chain concept tells us that a firm is way more than just a random collection of machinery, money, and people. It is a very deliberate sequence of steps. You see, the whole point of mapping this framework out is to understand exactly how much value your company is producing with every single sale, and figuring out where that value actually comes from. As this quote highlights, successful firms add value in two specific ways: customer satisfaction for the buyer and profit for the shareholders. The chain of activities literally gives the products more added value than the sum of all the individual parts combined. And honestly, that is the true secret of synergy in business.
Moving right along to Section 2, primary versus support activities, the big divide. The very first step in conducting any value chain analysis is to divide the company's operations into two broad headings. You basically have to categorize everything your company does to figure out what is actively building the product versus what is just supporting the builders.
It actually really helps to think about the anatomy of a business like a car. Support activities are like the chassis and the electronics, while your primary activities are the drivetrain that literally moves the product forward. So primary activities are directly concerned with the physical creation, the sale, the delivery, and the after-sales support of your product. Support activities, on the other hand, well, they provide the glue. They ensure everything operates effectively and efficiently.
Now, before we zoom in on that drivetrain, it is absolutely vital to acknowledge that support activities, things like procurement, R&D, HR, and firm infrastructure, they don't build the product directly, but they are the necessary foundation. Procurement gets the materials, HR makes sure you have trained people, infrastructure handles your accounting and legal. Without these running smoothly in the background, your primary activities would completely stall out.
Which brings us to Section 3, exploring primary activities, walking the chain. Now that we see the whole ecosystem, let's zoom in strictly on those primary links. This is where we focus heavily on the actual creation and delivery of value to the end consumer.
These 5 primary activities are essentially a sequential process. You track how raw inputs enter the building with inbound logistics, get transformed in operations, get shipped out via outbound logistics, get sold through marketing and sales, and finally get supported in the customer's hands with service. But take a look at step 2 right there in the middle. I want you to think about your own day-to-day business for a second. Out of all those steps, where is the exact point that raw fuel is ignited into forward momentum? Where do separate, less valuable pieces magically become the single, highly valuable product that your customer actually wants to buy? That magic happens in Section 4, Operations, the core engine. When we look at operations in the larger context of those primary activities, it sits right at the absolute center. It is the critical, non-negotiable bridge between your inbound materials and your outbound finished goods.
So operations is quite literally the manufacturing heart of the organization. It's the day-to-day reality of taking the inputs gathered by inbound logistics, your raw materials, your supplies, your people, and physically shaping them into a final value-added output. You are basically taking parts that are worth X and through the engine of operations assembling them into a product worth 10X. And as our sources point out, this covers a massive amount of ground. We're talking production and machining, assembly, packaging, equipment maintenance, facilities operations, quality assurance, and even environmental protection. It is the entire day-to-day reality of running the business. If you're a hotel, your operations consist of check-in, housekeeping, and room service. If you're a manufacturer, it's the factory floor running at peak capacity.
All right, final stop. Section 5. Creating competitive advantage, tuning the engine. Now that we have laser-focused on operations as the core primary activity, we have to ask the big question. How does optimizing this specific engine drive competitive advantage for the entire company? Because a basic level of competence is required just to play the game, but to win, you have to build core competencies.
It all comes down to how management chooses to tune their engine. You can aim for cost leadership, which means highly efficient processes, slashing waste, and strict cost control to drive down expenses. Maybe you automate your assembly line to reduce labor. Or you tune for differentiation, focusing on better materials, advanced machining, and rigorous quality assurance to create a unique, superior product that completely stands out, justifying a premium price.
Identifying which of those discrete operational processes reflect your firm's real strengths and weaknesses is the gateway to true operational excellence. When you do a value chain analysis, you are essentially evaluating each activity to find out where you can improve. You literally have to look at a specific machine or a specific packaging process and ask, is this adding value or is it subtracting value from the ultimate product?
So, I'll leave you with this to consider about your own organization today. Are your processes simply running on autopilot, or are you strategically tuning your operations to absolutely dominate the road ahead? Remember, your value chain is only as strong as its core engine. Take a hard look at your operations and see where you can pull ahead of the competition. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep optimizing.